Welcome, everybody, back to another Lions Daily episode, man. It is a Wednesday. We're continuing our preview of training camp by going through all the positional groups, talking about the battles, maybe the early projections, the bubble watch, all of that. But I'm going to add a little bit more flavor to it today by, at the end of this, doing like a way too early type of prediction type of thing. Now, that's not for the full 53, but I think that as we follow along, because we're breaking this in only three shows, so Friday we'll finish this up. As we follow along, I want to kind of outline, like, all right, let me just throw a prediction at the wall of, like, these are the guys of that positional group that make the team. That way we get an idea of what actually adds up to the 53-man roster. So much is going to change between now and then. New players added in, unfortunately, injury. So much is going to change that we just don't know. But I think that giving you kind of like a rough outline of what the 53 could be makes the battles make more sense. Because I know on Monday when we talked about, I think it was Monday, we talked about one of the positional group battles. I didn't necessarily say that it would be a battle between those players within the group. It was more so about those players versus another positional group would make it difficult. So I want to like throw a rough idea of what the 53 could look like, but only go through the positional groups that we're talking about. That way I don't spoil the next episode. So we'll do that at the end. I'll make that make sense. But today we have a couple spots that we're going through: cornerbacks, safeties, and tight ends. Cornerback, safeties, and tight ends. And tight end is tough. Tight end is like the most maybe logjam spot. Outside of us just keeping two tight ends, and I think that's actually on the board. That's still very possible. Lions do that. Outside of just keeping two tight ends, you got like four guys. It doesn't feel like there's much separation between anybody, and that includes undrafted free agent signings. Cornerback and safety, specifically cornerback, feels a little bit more clear-cut. It actually is more so like fighting for playing time, and then potentially how many do they keep. That seems to be more of the battle there than anything. But like receiver, I think that's a really strong positional group. I'll also update what we had on Monday. So like wide receiver, who I actually had making the team, I'll give you that on Monday. Or I'll give you that today for Monday. So, yeah, O-line, we're saving O-line for Friday. That's going to be like peak. I think offensive line is going to be the best of the best. So we're going to save that for Monday. I don't want to do that too soon. All right, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about these positional groups. No particular order here. Let's go first. Let's go to the cornerback room. I think this one's a little bit more straightforward. So let's just jump right into cornerback. I think this one's a little bit more simplified. You can see it. I think there's four locks on the team, and there's two guys that have kind of given themselves the nod up while also having one player that to me is clearly on the bubble. Okay, now we actually recently did a show on the cornerback room, or really the secondary as a whole, so we hit on both of these, but we really focused on cornerback. But this one to me is kind of obvious. Okay, we got a couple of high draft picks in there, so of course they're going to, Mute Mutai is going to get some love. It's about time. Mute Mutai is going to get some love on Friday. But, this one's pretty straightforward. Amik Robertson, those three guys actually all made the team last year. I expect them to all make the team again. I guess maybe a big surprise could be like if Robertson didn't make the team, but I don't know why that would happen. Like, you would have to look so bad. Something would have to happen. You'd have to look so bad. You'd have to be an injury. Something else would have to shake this up. Because outside of that, I just don't see any way that these first four don't make the team. Regis got paid big money. One of the best in football. I think he's going to fit really well here. I think it's actually going to work perfectly for him. But it's actually about that next in group. And I'm going to give these guys a leg up. One, a free agent signing this offseason that has proven himself a little bit. It's just about Ben being on the field. That's Rocky Sin. He hasn't consistently been on the field. He's been and missed some time. You go back 3 years ago, of course, we saw him at a pretty consistent amount, over 600 snaps, and 2 years ago it was 200, and the year before it was barely saw him on the field. So there is some of that to Rocky Sin. There also can be some inconsistencies with not only giving up some big plays, but also on top of that, flags, penalties. There's some hit and miss. I feel like there could be a little bit more variation when you watch Rocky Sin than anything. And then you have Khalil Dorsey. And Khalil Dorsey got a 2-year deal. It wasn't a big deal by any means, but it was a 2-year extension to kind of lock him in. I think the Lions may feel like that could be really strong value because I believe they really do trust Khalil Dorsey. I thought early on, like, okay, maybe there's some inside-outside flexibility when we had him, and I think he's just gotten better and better kind of quietly behind the scenes. And I think right now, while we haven't had to lean that direction, this last 2-year deal makes me believe that the Lions are ultimately now confident where, hey, they need to go somebody. Like if there was their cornerback number 5, we had to put a name to that, especially on the outside. I think right now they would lean towards Khalil Dorsey. I think they're at that point now where they'd be like, hey, we're comfortable with that dude stepping in and starting. All right, we're at that point where we would feel that way. But then and it's Stanley, by the way, there's an extra T in there. He's the guy that wraps up this room, Stanley Thomas Oliver, who is the wild card, I guess, because we just haven't really seen him as a Lion. You would have to go back to the preseason to watch Stanley Thomas a couple of years ago. And stylistically, again, I think the fit is there. We've seen him play a variety of different coverages in a small stint during the preseason. He got cut on the final day or waived on the final day of roster cuts by the Carolina Panthers. So he was sticking around towards the end. He's a former 7th-round pick, I believe, by the Carolina Panthers, a little bit on the smaller side, but he shows he plays a very physical style. He was comfortable in press coverage. I think he clearly has the movement skills to kind of live there if you want him to, but then also they put him in off coverage. He's just a very balanced player. That was the big takeaway for me with Stanley. He was a very balanced player, played very square consistently as a coverage piece. Off coverage did a really good job getting very early leverage, and he showed a lot of the quickness underneath that would be needed. You see the footwork, right? He could deal with a lot of different release types seemingly by some of the movement speed he has at the line of scrimmage. So I think he fits. It's just you're going to have to up, and it's possible. He could definitely upend Khalil Dorsey, who's been around for a while because they know what they kind of have there, and that's very possible. And Rocky Sin, of course. I mean, if it's more bad than good from Rocky Sin, he could definitely get jumped. So I think there is a competition between Nexton and Bubble. It just comes down to how many players. But as of now, I think there's a possibility that they keep 6. I think it's on the table. They keep these first 6 here, and maybe they go lighter at a different positional group. I think the secondary is in a really strong spot. And I have this other graphic that I want to throw up here before we move on to the next one. And I just put together their statistics on the screen just to give a different little outline of what we're talking about. So, yeah, you got to go back a little bit for Thomas Oliver. Haven't really seen him play much outside of that Panthers preseason, but I thought it was good during the Panthers preseason because it's just how consistent you felt that he was going to be. You didn't know if he was going to be much of a playmaker, but you felt a lot of consistency. Dorsey hasn't consistently been on the field either, to be honest, but I think even if we're taking that very small sample size, those 73 snaps, I thought it was the best sample of snaps for one season that I've seen from Khalil Dorsey. Now that, again, it's not a ton there because there's not much to grab onto, but I just feel like he's gotten better and better. He's looked more comfortable. He just has the instincts. He has the feel to kind of live at corner. And then again, you can see how inconsistent it's been with Rocky Sin just getting on the field. The positive Rocky Sin is you have seen him utilize different ways stylistically. Like we know with Baltimore, in 2023, they could use him in zone. They could put him in off coverage. He could be comfortable in those spots, big, physical, long. He could kind of fit there, but he's always been capable to get down and press guys with Vegas. That was a pretty physical team on the outside. San Fran would do the same thing with some longer corners. He fits in stylistically. It's just about having him on the field consistently. So, again, cornerback, I love the room. I think the first 6 feel very comfy right now, and I'll kind of give you how I'm seeing that, how I think that's going to shape out very early, how I think it's going to shape out as we go forward here. The biggest thing, honestly, to this one is what do they view a guy like Avonte Maddox as, who's inside, who's outside. The way I look at it is I think our best 3 can all play inside, outside. We clearly have that with Rakestraw, although they want to focus on him on the outside this year, which makes some sense. Kind of simplify that, let him kind of settle in a little bit. I think Terrian can play inside and outside just based on what he did at Alabama. I thought he was capable of that coming out of the draft, so I still believe in that, but I don't think they're going to want to move him a ton there. And then DJ Reed clearly can play inside and outside. He hasn't done it in a long time, but his skill set translates to that. If that's the case, I don't think it's a bad thing. If you're still going to have him on the field, you just got to get your best 3 on the field, and I think all those guys are capable of doing that. We know Amik is after last season, though I like Amik better on the outside. That's going to be the most interesting conversation about this whole thing. All right, let's go to the safety position room because this is where things get more interesting from a backup battle perspective. Like, this is where things get a little bit more cloudy. So we go to safety. We know what the top is kind of looking like here. This is pretty straightforward. The locks, Kirby Joseph just got the big deal. Brian Branch isn't going anywhere. The flexibility, I mean, this guy could be playing corner for us. I'm going to so here's where things get bold, all right? Here's where things get bold because this is different. After doing this Monday, I thought about this differently. I don't want to necessarily say, okay, if I put him in this category, that means I'm going to say he's on the 53 or not. But this is, so you'll see that at the end. I wanted to kind of really sort them and where I feel like they're at entering this. And I know Dan Jackson, 7th-round pick. It's crazy to list him as a lock. I think he's going to be a lock. So this is definitely predictive heavy here for Dan Jackson. There's a chance he doesn't make the team. He's a little bit older. You're going to have to add some special teams value, which I think they'll buy into. I can understand why you'd be like, push Dan Jackson back a little bit, right? We haven't seen it. I believe in what he is at safety to the extent where I think he's going to be very comfortable very quickly, and I think they're going to be very comfortable with him in that role. I don't know if he's going to be making plays, though. That's going to be the thing for Dan Jackson. His special teams has to look good because I don't know that he's going to be much of a playmaker at safety, and that will be the big problem is I don't know how many splash plays you're going to get from Dan. I don't know how often he's actually going to stand out. I hope that becomes the thing for him in coverage where he does stand out. I just don't know how fast it's actually going to come along. But I think that the flexibility between strong safety, free safety, put him in the box, leave him at single high safety, having the range to do that, you can step him down, play him in coverage, underneath zone. Like the flexibility across the board and the scheme comfortability that I think he's going to bring defensively is going to be surprising for a rookie. I think him being a little bit older and having a ton of experience will help him. I want to see the tackling form get a lot cleaner. That would be the one thing I think it's one thing to not have like 2 interceptions in the preseason. Like, okay, whatever. But if he's missing tackles every game, that might be the biggest problem. And that's actually where I say that special teams has to look good, because if he's out there on special teams, he's got the skill set to do it. But if he's missing tackles, if he's throwing himself at ball carriers like he did back in college, and it's just ugly technically, that will be the fastest thing to get him into trouble. Inconsistencies as a run defender, inconsistencies as a tackler specifically. In open field, if you're a single high, I trust he's going to be where he's supposed to be, but he can't let people get by him on that spot. So for me, that's going to be the biggest thing that could get him into trouble. I just think that his comfortability at safety is going to shine, and I think he's going to look closer to a veteran at that spot. Maybe not like an over top, but someone that you're comfortable with in the back end. And also from a competition perspective, he's in a room where you don't have a lot of proven pieces. You know, in fair, there's really not a lot of proven pieces. It's not like you got 7-year veterans that he's battling up against for this. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that and then put Avonte Maddox next. But again, Avonte Maddox is, in my opinion, kind of transitioning to a safety. He's done both. I'm viewing him more so as a transition into that safety role than anything, because I think that's where you're going to get the most consistent play out of Avonte Maddox. I think that's what he's built for, his physicality, his willingness to come down and hit guys. I'm loving Avonte Maddox as a safety, but having the flexibility to be like, hey, here's our third safety. You know, you can put him over a tight end, that kind of, like, I view Avonte Maddox similar to what CD Deuce did for us. Now, next in, I'm going to put Strickland. He's one of the biggest wild cards in all of this, because I love Lawrence Strickland. He was awesome in last year's preseason. The flexibility was fantastic. He did everything right for the Lions in the preseason. And then we didn't see him at all in the regular season. Mo Norris got 1 snap in the regular season. So, I mean, really everybody from this spot on hasn't played for us. So there's a lot of, I don't know what's going on. But Lawrence Strickland was so good in last year's preseason that if he was the exact same player, I'd probably feel pretty good about him making the team. But the problem is this is going to be a numbers game. This is going to be a big-time numbers game, I think, really is the key more so than anything, because it's not, to me, maybe going to be the most difficult thing for him to separate himself. It's like, oh, Lawrence Strickland will be our safety 5. The difficulty is going to be him telling the Lions, or basically showing to the Lions, like, yo, you got to keep 5 safeties, especially if you're looking at Avonte Maddox more as a safety. Now, if you start to really dabble in the idea of, hey, Avonte, he's playing a lot more in the nickel for us, we really like that, and that's how training camp ends up shaking out, now I think Strickland's opportunity to make the team becomes a lot more strong. Because all of a sudden now you're viewing him more as like, all right, he's kind of a nickel that we can play at safety. And if you get to that extent with him, where all of a sudden now Lawrence Strickland's value becomes really strong, because he is also comfortable in playing in a nickel kind of role, playing a safety role as well. He's comfortable doing both of those things, as we saw last year. Doesn't mean I want to be a man piece on everybody, but he's capable of doing that, and flexibility is so valuable at safety. It's the number one thing at safety for us. Now, where things are interesting to me here, though, when we get to the back end of the true bubble, and again, I don't know that anybody's going to be able to make the team out of these 3, but the guy that I'm actually the most curious of, and Strickland was kind of a shine, like, whoa, who is this guy, right? The UDFA last year kind of shined. And Dan Jackson's probably going to have some buzz because he was a draft pick. The guy that I'm really intrigued by is Eric Hallett. Eric Hallett's the player I'm circling of this entire room, because to me, his skill set says flexibility. He's built like an absolute hitter. He doesn't have to give up a lot of leakage if he tackles correctly. Sometimes there was some hit and miss, but technically speaking, he breaks down as a tackler in space. He also does it in the box. I think his ability to sift through traffic has been noticeable. There's a success rate that he can have there. And then in coverage, it's really the flexibility in coverage to me that makes me buy into, I want to see more of this. I want to see what this turns into, right? Because there are a lot of guys that are kind of like in-betweeners a little bit in the safety role. And I think Eric Hallett, going back to college, his ability to both man up guys and then also play in zone coverage is where Eric Hallett becomes super interesting for me. And the most intriguing part about this is we just haven't seen much of him. So if I pull up my safety graphic real quick just to give you an idea of how little we've seen of some of these guys, let me pull this up. Bam. Right here, you can see Eric Hallett. You'd have to go back to the preseason for Jacksonville. And you can see there's not much really statistical production, but in those 67 snaps and going through those snaps, I'm bought in. I want to see more. I want to see what this looks like. I don't know what he looks like as a Lions, but what I like is his feel. when he was at single high, he was very aware of the flow of the play, showed a lot of discipline. I thought that he had a really nice ability to recognize concepts. He always felt like he was very aware of, okay, how am I getting set up here? What concepts are they trying to play into? He felt like he was very in control of what was happening and keeping everything in front of him. Again, he drops his passes as a tackler where he still missed some tackles. You could see the one missed tackle there, which wasn't a great miss. It was down the field. It looked like he was going to make the hit and then just bounced off him. But ultimately, the way that he does it technically, I think I could buy into there. I think he's also very rangy. He's got a legitimate long speed to get sideline to sideline. A guy like Ian Kennelly concerns me a little bit more there. I'm like, okay, I want to see if this is going to translate. When it comes to Hallett, I'm actually pretty comfortable with his ability to run. The biggest knock I have on Hallett is he's on the smaller side. He's built a little bit more stout. He's not really built like a long Kirby Joseph type. He's a little bit more stout, shorter to the ground. He's under 6 foot tall. You wonder about that for a range perspective. You wonder if he's going to be a playmaker, if he's going to be snatching balls over the top, or if he's more of a split safety kind of build. Like, is he a guy that's like, oh, we put him in cover 4, play top down, right, break on the football? That process didn't feel overly dynamic. He didn't feel overly explosive in working downhill, which is a problem. You tie into that with the length. He's got some of those knocks working against him because I don't think he stands out in any of those traits, but his ability to step down in man-to-man cover, the twitchiness in the lower body, the fluidity that feels like it's there, the body control. I didn't feel as much of that with guys like Ian Kennelly. Kennelly's built like a linebacker. Hallett, to me, skill, and remember, Mo Norris isn't a big guy either. Hallett's the one that I would just keep an eye on. He's the guy that I would not overlook as we get into these battles because I think ultimately he's got a real opportunity for how the Lions like to play to show a lot of interchangeability, show a lot of comfortability when they put him in those man assignments. And I think that's a really tough spot to ask of a young guy. Hallett's been capable of that going back to college. His coverage upside gives him a chance here. And truly, if you're going across the board here, like that was where Strickland stood out last year. You put him over slots and he was comfortable. Mo Norris, on the other hand, that's not his big strength, right? He's a big physical. He's kind of like Kennelly in a sense. You trust him between the tackles. He kind of gets to his spots well, but I don't know that I trust him as much to actually match up with players. That's kind of where I'm at to the entire back end of the safety room. Is like, who's going to show me that true flexibility? Even Dan Jackson, you wonder a little bit, like, if I put him in man, how well is this going to work? Like, he plays it smartly, but I don't know if he can actually stick with guys. Hallett has an opportunity, I think, separate himself within this room. So he's the most interesting piece to me of this safety battle between really these 4. It could be difficult if any of them plays well, between these 3, I should say. Really, you could throw Strickland into that mix. Strickland, to me, feels like he has a clear leg up, but everybody else, I don't know how they get on the team. It feels like it's going to have to play out through other positions. But if there's a guy that I would really take a swing on here, it'd be Eric Hallett, is just betting on like he could do something that shocks them. The one thing I wonder about with Kennelly is the flexibility. Like, I'm not saying he should be a linebacker because I just haven't seen enough. And, the games that I've went through, it's difficult. Competition's way different. I don't know if his man-covered skills are actually going to translate. I don't know that he has the body control of the top routes to be sticky. I don't know that's going to work. He clearly has the burst, right? He's got closing burst. He's got lateral twitch. He looks like he can scrape down the line. He looks like he could be a legitimate blitzer. He plays with that kind of authority to his game. I buy that. I don't know how rangy he actually is going to be in the NFL. Like, there's legit questions, but his build in the upper body, he can work through traffic incredibly well. He might be the best here outside of Brian Branch and just working through traffic, playing between blocks, getting over top of blocks, utilizing his hands. It brings up upside of like, all right, this guy might be a little bit of a blitzer too. He's built to play with tight ends, run with tight ends across the field. He shows that kind of juice. So I'm excited to see it. I wonder like how much they're going to dabble in, like, okay, can we put him near the line and let him be a disruptor? Like, you remember when we signed, now this was more so due to injuries, but when we signed last year, we went out and we added, now his name's slipping my mind. I can't think of his name right now, but the old Jets, by the way, we got a lot of Jets in our back end. The old Jet safety, we had him in Seattle. We added him last year. He played a very little bit for us, but the Lions kind of brought him in, and it was like immediately his role is like, we're just kind of blitz him. He's kind of like a linebacker for us, right? You went from safety to linebacker. I feel like Kennelly has some of that to him, where it's like, can he just be a disruptor? And if that's the case, you should sign on special teams quickly. That'll be a good spot for him to give himself a nod. I'm not bought in right now on believing that it's going to happen. Again, if I had to put money on one of those 3, I would do it for Eric Hallett and just be like, I'll just see what happens. But it's exciting because I think there is a lot of like, all right, how can we actually use this dude? Like, what can we really tap into here with this player? How can we get creative with this? That moves us on to the final position group of this mix. And this one is a war, man. This one's going to be fun. The tight end position group. This is crazy. You got 2 locks. And the Lions have kept 2 tight ends before. There's a possibility they keep none of these next 4. They're just like, oh, we're keeping these 2. We're not playing around with it, right? We're going to keep these 2 because the Lions have done that. If nobody really separates himself and they feel like, all right, this guy's kind of close to this guy, And then it's like, all right, like, for example, we just went through safety. If the line's like, man, we really want to keep Strickland, we want to keep 5 safeties, then maybe tight end's the spot where you're like, let's just keep 2. We don't need to keep 3. We like Yeboah. We like Luke Deal. We think we're going to get one of them back on the practice squad if we let both go. Let's just let them go and try to get one back. We get one back, cool, man. We got a little bit of depth there. Like, that's very possible. This is the room that feels like that. I think there's a real possibility lines to say, let's roll with 2 because they've done this. You want to believe, like, oh, they'll keep 3, right? They got competent, but it's like, I don't know. Are any of these guys going to shine to the extent where it's like we have to keep that guy on the roster, we have to keep a spot for him? I don't know with the tight end group. That said, though, we know the first 2 are locks, and then it gets messy because everybody kind of seemingly finds himself in a similar position between this tight end room of really not much production outside of Shane Zylstra a couple of years ago, like 3 years ago now, where he had 11 receptions for us. That's really all the production we have between anybody here that's battling at the tight end position. Let me make sure I get the right graphic up here. Hold up, I got the wrong one on the screen. This one right here. Kenny Yeboah has maybe the most production, which is insane because Kenny Yeboah was not at all a receiving threat last year. He was not at all a receiving threat this past season. 5 receptions, 8 targets. But when you watched him, he ran like 30 routes the entire season. And when you watched him, like, all right, he's coming down with the football. Everything's pretty straightforward. It's like, all right, he's a chip flat kind of piece, like maybe check and release, hit somebody, get out into the flat. Not going to maybe do much after the catch, but you can see his body type. Like, all right, he's going to handle contact pretty well. I think I trust him in contested situations. He's got a big body, kind of box out guys. I can trust him in contested situations because of the big hands that he has. He ran into the end zone this past year. As a blocker, you see with a body type, like this should work as a run blocker. He's not that twitchy. He doesn't really seem to have much juice. He doesn't really have any kind of make you miss, I feel like, with the ball in his hand. So I don't feel like there's much of a threat there. Maybe he shows more than I expect. To me, this feels like a battle of who's going to block the best, which is crazy, but it kind of feels like that. So with that being the case, then I start to get to, well, who's going to also show flexibility, right? Again, outside of special teams, like, which of these guys do you trust to kick back into a fullback position? Which of these guys do you trust to split out into a slot? I mean, how many guys can do multiple things? Is anybody going to be able to do their own thing so well that it's like, oh, it doesn't even matter that he can do multiple things. That guy's just really good at what he does. That might be what it comes down to. Shane Zylstra, to me, would still, him and Kenny Yeboah have the nod, have the slight leg up, very slight, because Shane Zylstra's been here, so I think there's a much better connection that could connect a lot faster as long as he's healthy. And Kenny Yeboah, on the other hand, got like 480 guaranteed. It's not a lot, not million, 480K. So it's not like significant, but he did get some guaranteed money to come over to the Lions he spent last year with the Jets. And then you have 2 UDFAs, Zach Horton, Luke Deal. The one that I'm really intrigued by of this group that I think could be sneaky is Zach Horton. Zach Horton tends to be the guy that I'm like, man, I don't know. I can't get myself to really buy into the Lions keeping a roster spot for Zach Horton because I don't think that he's going to bring enough to the table to it's like we got to keep this guy on the 53. We're going to cut a safety, like something for that. Like, are you going to cut Lawrence Strickland for Zach Horton? Like, I don't know how they get to that point. And I do think that this is one position, if there is a position, maybe a couple of others, but this is really the primary one where if a veteran came available that they would be willing to sign him. Because I just don't know that even at these guys' best, if they're going to have enough to make a spot. Like, that's where this thing is tricky. But a guy that I'm just interested to see what Zach Horton does because I think you can clearly use him as a fullback. I love the body type. Like, I want this guy lead blocking. He took guys out of plays. Technically, it felt like it was very up and down as a run and pass protector, but when it was good, it looked really good. I love the frame that he brings, and he did have legitimate production in his last year in college, way more than Luke Deal did. He had legitimate production. Everything was underneath. It was all catch and run opportunities, but it's kind of what everybody else does, not named Shane Zylstra. And again, Zylstra hasn't had production in like 3 years, right? So I think Zach Horton's the guy that could stand out amongst this group. That's kind of where I'm at with it right now. But it's that. Luke Deal, to me, feels like the best blocker from a consistency perspective. Maybe you could visualize more upside with Horton as a lead blocker. Luke Deal did do some of that back in college as well because you could put him behind the line. You could line him as a sniffer, right? You could put him in line. He was mainly an inline piece. His pass protection shined because of that. He was a fantastic move blocker, so he showed a ton of that ability as well. I don't know that I trust him to consistently move guys, out of the play and like, hey, put the hard hand on, go clear this run lane. That way Montgomery can get through. Like, I don't know if I think I'd rather have Zach Horton for what the Lions have already and already having a Brock Wright. I'm like, I'd probably lean Zach Horton to do that. But Luke Deal's ability to play in space, play with control, be much more technically sound, it feels like. He just doesn't do much in the passing game. I'm still not sure what the heck we're going to get there. I have no idea. It's like, okay, I just want to see it. Like Kenny Yeboah can run a little bit of level 1 routes. He's just not going to really separate from anybody. I don't think he's a man separator at all. Zylstra's the guy that can separate a little bit here. I think, though, if there's a sneaky piece that actually could bring a little something, it's Zach Horton. He could run away. He could potentially find some little spots underneath. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him down the field very much beyond like 6 yards and being a productive receiver. But it's like I don't know if any of these guys can. Luke Deal is the body type to do it. He just hasn't done it. So for me, I think this is the most fascinating one because I have no idea where the lean is to this one. No clue. But if there is a position group where I would say the Lions do what they've done in the past, they decide to just go light on a specific positional group, which they've done before, to me, it's clearly tight end. Like they would be very willing to just go, oh, we're going to keep 2. Now, the thing with Zach Horton that does intrigue me is I could see a world in which the Lions could visualize Zach Horton as kind of like a running back too. Where they're like, well, he's kind of a fullback. You know, he's listed as a tight end, but he's actually kind of a fullback for us because Lions constantly went after the same kind of type. It was like, all right, he's a blocker. I mean, these are legitimate just blocking tight ends that do a little bit underneath. So if you can kind of line up as a fullback, it's like, oh, okay, well, he's kind of a running back. We'll just count him as that. John Moore in offense, I think that fits. I think you need that. I think it's no surprise why they brought these pieces in for John Moore in offense because he's utilized guys like that. He's typically had players like that. I'm fascinated by that if they kind of could view him as like, all right, he's actually not just a tight end, he's also kind of a running back as well. That said, though, I don't know how anybody said. I don't know who's going to separate themselves. I actually have no idea. I mean, if I had to bet on it right now, this is where I would lean. So let's go to this spot. Let's go to this graphic, and this is going to kind of pick up Monday and what we did Monday when we kind of predicted a few things, and then we're going to save what we haven't shown for Friday's episode where we kind of put this all together. This is not my official 53-man roster prediction, but it's more so to kind of give just an idea of like, okay, well, for what we've talked about, if we kind of sort it out, this is what it could look like to hit the 53-man roster. That way it makes a little bit more sense. So we'll go here first, and I want to start with this tight end positional room, and we'll also showcase the receivers from last week as well. So I think for receiver, they keep 6. Right now, I think they go heavy at receiver. Like, this is how I think they should do it. You don't necessarily, and this is how they've always done it, so I'm really buying into they'll do this like it again. They're not focused on as much of the numbers right away. They feel like they'll adjust to that. It's just like, let's keep the best 53. And to me, I think your best 53 involves keeping your 6 receivers. Like, I understand 6 is a lot. Last year we came in with 4. Keep 6. Like, just keep both draft picks. Keep Patrick. I don't anticipate any of these guys to take a step back that we've already know of. And the other 2, like, I don't want to cut either of these guys. I think you're going to get way too much of Lovett where year 2 could be the year we start to see him. But I don't want to let any of these guys go. So as of now, I think you just keep 6 and go heavy there. Now, tight end, while it's a mess, I have a slight lean towards Kenny Yeboah right now. A slight lean with his build, with his physicality. You could put him in line a little bit. I think you could line up as a direct fullback and just let him lead the way. I have a slight lean that way, but man, it's not by much. I'm really kind of open. I'm just super open-minded with this one. Like, whoever stands out, whatever, man. That's great. I think, to me, while I'm leaning Yeboah with the guarantees and the flexibility he could have and the toughness and the Lions falling in love with that, maybe some special teams upside being a protecting piece, I do think, though, that Luke Deal as a blocker could be the best blocker of any of them, technically speaking, year 1. So if you were trying to just look for, like, who could be the best at what they do well, there's a real shot that there's a real case I think that Luke Deal is going to be able to make of, like, I'm the best blocker of all 4. Like, I'm the best blocker. I'm the most versatile blocker. I may not be, the guy you want leading the way to clear things out, but I'm the most versatile, consistent blocker. That's valuable to an extent, but I don't know if it's enough to make the team. But he would be the guy that may have the case there. Now, what else we have went through so far, let's throw these up as well. So we did defensive line, and we have Aiden Hutchinson. Okay, I don't want to go through all this, but we did this on Monday. Defensive line, linebacker. The biggest thing with linebacker is we don't know what is going on with Alex. So I don't know what to do with that one. I'm going to say Rodrigo comes into the season. Well, as of now, as one of those like exception pieces where it's like, okay, we don't have to count him towards the 53. He'll be available after 4 weeks. He won't be ready, but that kind of thing. Same thing with Liam. We'll do that to both of those. They don't have to count towards 53. So that allows us to keep these pieces on the screen, which to me led to the toughest guys that are out here is Miles Adams is out, Pat O'Connor's out. And then from the linebacker position, I think the next guy in for me is Zeke Turner. And that's kind of the battle here is if Alex Anzalone plays, I could see the Lions cutting Zach Cunningham, and if they wanted to keep an extra backer, going with a guy like Zeke Turner. I think if Alex is not showing up, that shakes everything, and I think Cunningham's automatically a lock. But these are mostly guys that we've talked about. I love this room, by the way. This is fascinating. And Muhammad's going to also be in there. I know he was one of the next in guys. We're going to keep Muhammad in this group because I think Muhammad has a very valuable role for us. And I'm also not including Wingo because I'm getting more and more optimistic that maybe Wingo, will be in a spot where he's ready to go by week 1. I don't know. There's so much unknown there, but maybe he will be. So now with what we went through today, let's go to the defensive back room, and here's how I'm going to lay it out. So for cornerback, we're going to go DJ Reed's in, Arnold's in, Rakestraw's in, Robertson's in. I'm going to then say Khalil Dorsey is in. I think right now they trust him as kind of like the Vildor replacement. Like if we needed to put him out there and start, he could do it. And I'm going to say Rock Ya-Sin slides his way in. So like receiver, we have 6. Rock Ya-Sin, though, I'm not super comfortable with because I do feel like if you put head-to-head, like I went with safety, Joseph, Branch, Maddox, Dan Jackson, head-to-head, you look at both those groups and you say, okay, but we have Eric Hallett or we have Lauren Strickland. Maybe let's go with Lauren. It's an easier example because he was here last year and he played well. You have Lauren Strickland versus Rock Ya-Sin. Lauren Strickland, who brings nickel flexibility and safety flexibility for both spots, played really well. Let's say he puts together 2 preseasons versus Rock Ya-Sin. Like the versatility that Strickland adds while also being a part of a room that has a rookie that may have to play a lot this year, especially if Max is bouncing around, is probably much more valuable than keeping Rock Ya-Sin. Like it's probably much more valuable to that extent. We'll just keep 5 corners, knowing that we can push Branch to corner, knowing that we can push Maddox to corner. Rock Ya-Sin doesn't give you that direct flexibility. You're not going to go like, hey, Rock Ya-Sin go play safety. I mean, if you had to do that, you're probably in trouble. So for me, as much as I like the Rock Ya-Sin idea of like he could flash a lot more than anybody else here, I think it's tough because you're kind of playing the numbers game to that extent. Rock Ya-Sin could be the best of those groups together, but I think that's a way to look at it as it might make more sense to keep an extra safety. For me, though, if we're counting the extra safety, I think it's between Strickland. I think it's between Eric Hallett. I want to say I'd lean towards Strickland because he was that good last year and he earned that 53-man roster spot, but it doesn't guarantee anything this year. And I think Hallett, I wish I would have had this in my headlines video. I think Hallett has maybe the best opportunity to surprise people. I mean, think how fast he could legitimately move up this spot. If Maddox is bouncing around and he's your third safety, like outside of tight end, because I don't know that any of those guys like are legitimately in a spot to actually shine, like or get to a point where it's like, oh, they're doing all these things that we didn't anticipate. Like I don't know, like maybe Shane, but legitimately, like if your third safety is Maddox, who's not been a full-time safety in the past, the opportunity that's sitting right there for a guy like Hallett with flexibility to like, hey, jump way up there, like, oh, there's a 7th-round rookie in front of me. There's no other proven pieces in this back end. Strickland hasn't played a regular season snap. Mo Norris played 1 regular season snap, and he got out of reception. That's my competition. That's it. I can legitimately get playing time here. Like, so if there's someone that has a direct path to be like, oh my goodness, where did this guy come from? It's Eric Hallett to me / Strickland, but I'm going to say Hallett's the interesting one. So we'll leave that there. What I'm going to do is Friday, we'll come back. We'll wrap it up. We have O-line, quarterback, but that's not really outside of just how many we keep, that's not really running back. And we may have one more, but I think those are mainly it. And we'll wrap those up, and then I'll showcase what the final 53 would look like. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save that, but a final 53 idea before we get into training camp. We'll do an actual predictive 53, but just kind of an idea to lay it out and make it all make sense, and we'll make arguments for all those things. So I'll leave it there. Shout out to y'all joining. I appreciate it. I will see you guys soon. I'm going to leave it there, man. Bleacher Report, I'll see y'all on Friday. Same time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We out. YouTube, I got to get out of here, but I will say this. Quick update. Dose of Draft. While there hasn't been a video dropped yet, it is very close. Very close. I think we're going to jump it off with a mock. And ever since I've been, kind of diving into this, I've come up with a lot more ideas of like things that we could do. So if you guys have any draft things you want to see for 2026, let me know. Send it to me however you want to. But I do have a lot of like interesting ideas of just like content we could do while we're in this kind of downtime. And right now I'm actually transitioning into like getting my first look at these quarterbacks, which is great because that's kind of the final puzzle piece I need to put together a first round mock draft, is to just get a nice little sense of like who do I like early, that kind of thing. That's so much that's got to shake out, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Outside of that though, I feel pretty comfortable with being able to drop a mock right now. So I'm going to finish that up, and my hope is at worst next week we're dropping a mock draft. That's on Dose of Draft. So check that out. At worst, we're dropping a mock next week. If not next week, it might be this week. I'm open. You know what I mean? It's on the table that this weekend, you know what I'm saying? We dropping a mock draft. It might be live. But at worst, next week. That's where I'm at with it right now. We're going to get that thing rolling, man. No time to wait. I want to get that in before training camp gets off. We're going to get that channel rolling. We're going to take that thing off the ground. And then, of course, Lions content's going to shoot back up. We're going to start really rolling heavy into that. We got a couple of like collab things coming together, group things coming together that we have lined up. It's just kind of the downtime. So we don't want to like push it out now. It doesn't make sense, but it is coming. So yeah, with that, I appreciate y'all joining. Keeping heavy receiver. I love that, man. I'll send you a sweet idea on Discord. That sounds good, man. It sounds good. All right, I got to get out of here. I'll see y'all soon. Have a great Wednesday. I'm out.